right, it is 10 a.m., so we will get started. Hello, and thank you for joining us for this webinar Wednesday. My name is Sharon, and I am with the Colorado Statewide Internet Portal Authority, your Colorado government authority helping you get more information and services online. In today's webinar, we will learn about accessibility audits and remediation in order to comply with House Bill 21-1110 from Ryan and his team at Allyant, one of our newest supplier partners. Joining us is Ryan Weiland, VP of Digital Accessibility Sales. Before we get started, please go ahead and turn on captioning if you need or desire, and note that during the webinar you are muted. If you have questions or would like to communicate with the presenters or us at any point during the webinar, please use the chat box or the Q&A feature. We will unmute everyone at the end for remaining questions. We'll also have some poll questions for you to answer during the presentation and a post-webinar survey for you to fill out. We would deeply appreciate your feedback. Please join me in welcoming our speaker, Ryan. We appreciate his time and look forward to what he has to share, as I can tell you that I learn something new every time he presents. Also on the call is SIPA's Sales and Marketing Director, Beth Justice, Customer Success Director, Dwayne Tucker, Sales Operations Manager, Heather Nelson, and Operations Assistant, Sarah Fisher, if you have any questions for us. Thank you all for joining us today. And with that, I will turn it over to Ryan.
Thank you, Sharon. And I have shared my screen, so everybody should, if you're tagging along on the video or watching the screen, you should now be able to see it. I know we'll also distribute the deck, I believe, Sharon, after the webinar if needed, or if everybody has a request for it, we can certainly pass that along as well. Yeah, it's great to be here. I appreciate it, Sharon and Beth, for inviting us to your webinar Wednesday, especially during the very busy holiday season. Not lost on me that you've invited me to speak and present what we do here at Allyant, and also really appreciate everybody jumping on during this busy holiday season as well. As Sharon said, my role here at Allyant is VP of Digital Accessibility Sales. So I've been in the accessibility space for a little over 6.5 years. And by way of that, I've seen accessibility change a lot, especially with some of the things that are going on in places like Colorado, where you are on the leading edge of accessibility with House Bill HB 21-1110, always a tongue twister. And so, yeah, I'm going to jump in, kind of cover what we do here at Allyant. I always like to say on every webinar that I do have and I know Sharon's watching as well, I do have the Q&A up. I like these to be as interactive as possible. So if you have questions, please drop them in there. I will try to answer them in real time, or we should certainly have time at the end for questions as well. With that, I'll kind of jump right in and present sort of what we do here at Allyant more holistically as an organization, how we drive accessible communications for our customers, and then dive sort of in the weeds of those various services so you all can kind of understand how we fit into the mix and how SIPA can support you via Allyant. A little background on our organization. Allyant is a global organization focused on all lines of customer communication as it relates to accessibility. So we do have over 1,500 global clients, over 300 what we call accessibility champions and accessibility experts on our team. And through the great work that we're doing in Colorado, and more specifically with the SIPA team, we do have a lot of organizations that have jumped in to obtain support from Allyant out of Colorado. And I know we're deep in the weeds on many other conversations to support holistically across accessibility. Some of those are, the OIT, the governor's office, the city of Denver, some public schools such as Aurora Public Schools. And by way of that, one thing I always like to outline, and we'll kind of touch on this sort of towards the end of the webinar, we do support a very broad customer base. So we don't have just solutions for the enterprise. We really do scale our services across our various business units to ensure that we're providing support, whether you're a very small municipality or a very large, government agency or city, county, etc. So I don't want that to be lost in the broader conversation of what we do here at Allyant day in and day out. By way of that, I'll kind of touch 30,000-foot overview on what I mean by all services in all formats of customer communications here at Allyant. A lot of the accessibility, and more specifically digital accessibility space, a lot of vendors really focus on having a specific niche expertise, whether that be digital accessibility, and I'll dive deep into that. So website audits, mobile applications, customer portals, and ensuring consumers or obviously public employees have access to accessible portals and websites. Here at Allyant, we really focus on all formats of accessibility, and we have north of 50 years of experience doing that. So by way of that, the trifecta of solutions that I will cover today in more detail are digital accessibility, and I'll dive deep into that, document accessibility, providing support, remediation support, tooling support for creating accessible documents, be it PDFs, Word documents, PowerPoint files, etc. And then also printed documents. So thinking about the print community for anything that you're sending out to customers, if you're a public municipality that sends out any sort of things like bills or statements, etc., we do have a very robust division that can also provide customer communications in the printed accessible format. So we really bring all service areas together, and we have created essentially a one-stop shop to support not just municipalities and government agencies, but really all of our clients across all things customer communications as it relates to accessibility. I'll kind of start with digital accessibility and dive deep into how we support from a digital a footprint. High level overview into digital accessibility. The way that I like to frame this up, and this is where a lot of my background is in the space, is thinking about any way that a consumer or an employee, a member of your community would engage with your organization via a website, via a phone, via a portal. So we really do provide a comprehensive support mechanism for all digital accessibility communications. That can be websites, like county of websites, city of websites. It can be for mobile applications. If you have mobile applications, like you're a public utility company and your customers can engage their mobile application, we can provide very holistic support in auditing and in outlining where the pitfalls are from an accessibility perspective on those. Post-authentication platforms. We do a lot of this in state and federal government in the sense of, procurement platforms, platforms where someone would log into view tax information, where they DMV platforms. So really, there's a lot of different in the municipality space and in the government space as far as how someone would access through a post-authentication platform. I like to sort of preface with the platforms that we support is it really is holistic. We are platform agnostic. I know a lot of the work that we're doing with SIPO clients through Beth and Sharon are on a Drupal platform. Some are on a WordPress platform. Some are on Civic Plus. We work very closely with Civic Plus as well in background. So we can really provide holistic accessibility support across all customer communications as it relates to digital accessibility. If you have mobile apps, or if you're built on a specific CMS platform, we can provide holistic support for that. And I see a question. Nicole dropped in a question. And like I said, I like this to be interactive. I like to handle questions in as close to real time as possible. So Nicole's question was, can Allyant help with identifying a solution that can accept a form request or email request coming from a constituent and pop that request into a work queue that would be seen and reviewed, worked by a state of Colorado employee? This might be called the ticketing system or case management system. Yeah, we absolutely can do that. And Nicole, that's a great question. Then you dropped a second question of maybe you were too soon. You're not overly soon. I'll talk about procurement support in one of the upcoming slides, and I'll be sure, Nicole, that I touch on that question then. So yes, I will get to that. But that's a great question. So yes, we cover all things digital communications and digital accessibility. The way that we do that, and really the way that we frame this up in the sense of building that compliance roadmap, is a lot of times through really two project paths. And that can be acquiring something new, building something new. You're going through a design phase, you're rebuilding your website, you're rebuilding an application, you have an agency or a CMS platform building you something. We can provide support in the sense of looking at new builds or new designs, looking at those design files, and really jumping in from the perspective of, helping you build something accessible from the ground up. Where a lot of our customers engage with us, just to be quite frank, is auditing existing digital properties, right? The new build process is something that's very near and dear to us. We do, that frequently, but most of our work is auditing existing digital properties. So you have a website, you have a mobile application, you have a customer portal, and you need, more specifically and more recently under HB 21, you need to ensure that is compliant and accessible to, the global standards, which that global standard is WCAG. So the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, WCAG 2.2 is what the House bill calls out. And we audit to that every single day here at Allyant. The way that we do those audits, and this is a really critical piece of overall supporting our clients and building accessibility into these various forms of customer communications through websites and mobile applications. We do that through live user testing. That is the baseline of all of our testing here at Allyant. And by way of that, about half of our auditing staff is legally blind. So it is very, very critical to us when we think about driving accessibility, driving, equal experience for people living with disabilities. We do that through a paired auditing process. So whether we're looking at a really simple website, a complex website, a web platform, a mobile app, we pair two auditors together. Half of that pair every single time is a blind individual. We call them a native screen reader auditor. So on the web, they're going to audit with something called JAWS and NVDA, the two most prominent native screen readers used by individuals who are either low vision or blind. Those are installed natively on their device. And then from a sighted individual's perspective, pairing them with that blind individual, there's two core reasons that we do that. One, we want to support that blind auditor as they're going through the experience, right? We don't want them to be blocked or have screen reader hidden content. We don't want them to be confused by the experience. And so what that sighted auditor can do is they can talk them through the intended experience that you're looking to deliver to them. And that allows us to really, in a very detailed fashion, document the accessibility violations and help your team understand how to remove those access barriers. The second reason that we audit in that team of two is the disability spectrum is extremely broad. So when we think about complying to the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, WCAG, it's not just thinking about native screen reader users or blind individuals, right? So we have people with physical disabilities, could be cerebral palsy, ALS, spina bifida on more of the extreme cases, or someone with a short-term disability where they don't have the motor skills to move a mouse, control a mouse, click on something with a mouse, and they're moving their pointer along. What those individuals use with various physical disabilities is largely what we call keyboard navigation. So they're going to be navigating through your experience largely, among other keys, using the tab and the enter key. So they want to see something like a skip to main content. They want to see visible focus indicators that tell them this is where you are on the page. This is an actionable item. And when you get there, because you may not be able to click a mouse, you can hit the enter key and that will act as your mouse click. So by pairing that blind auditor with that sighted individual, that sighted auditor is going to test for physical disabilities. They're going to test for cognitive disabilities. So things like ADHD, various learning disabilities, reading disabilities, where the easiest way for me to explain really strong use case for that is if you have an automatically rotating carousel on like your homepage where it's panning through maybe 5 big things you have going on or upcoming in the town or in the city. When you have those, someone with a reading disability might need a minute and a half to read those, right? And someone without a disability might be able to keep up with that and engage with that content that's rotating every 5 seconds. So we really help customers understand putting a pause button on that. So someone who has a need to pause that, slow it down, and engage with that content, they have the ability to do that. And then obviously auditory disabilities as well. So by pairing those two auditors together, we ensure that we are covering everything as it relates to accessibility conformance and within those WCAG guidelines. One common question that we get, and so I'll kind of cover this in real time, is do you use automation? Do you have a widget that would solve all of these challenges for us? Here at Alliant, we do use a hybrid approach. So we do have a very robust automation or scanning tool as it relates to accessibility. The pitfall with an automated only approach is scanning tools find roughly about a third of the WCAG success criteria, which is why it's very, very critical from our perspective. And when we think about driving accessible experiences for our customers, that we do include people with disabilities as part of that audit or as part of that process. All things told, and we deliver audits to our clients of websites, portals, customer applications, tends to be about 90 to 95% issues presented by our or wrote up by our live auditors, and then 5 to 10 or 15% in some cases delivered from an automation tool. So it is a hybrid approach, but we do include people with disabilities on every single audit that we perform. The good news is, in looking at the poll question, it looks like about half of the audience has either at least thought about a web accessibility audit or had one. So that's great. A lot of you are ahead of the curve. I can assure you of that. And I think Sharon and Beth would agree with me on that. But there's still obviously time, right? This has to sort of be in place and in motion and laid out by July 1 of 24. So still plenty of time to get an accessibility audit done. And that's sort of what I'm talking about today and how we would support that. And then on the widget front, I won't harp too much on it. Obviously, Jared and Beth can chime in as they want. I know OIT has said that's not an equal solution. So we do not have an accessibility widget or plugin that we would tell you to deploy on your site. Quite frankly, there's a lot of reasons for that. But we really think about fixing the core code and helping our clients understand how to resolve that core code through that auditing process that we go through. With that, I'll kind of jump to how we deliver those accessibility results. We have an extremely robust system that we call the Allyant Hub, where we deliver all of those audits that we provide to our customers. Again, whether it's a really simple audit of a simple website all the way to the most complex procurement systems that are out there. When we deliver these results to our clients, we want to help them build that accessibility roadmap, right? It's not just getting an audit done, it's really helping our customers understand what are the most critical issues. How do we map out providing remediation or going through fixing these issues? So through our hub platform, we are actually building a very robust accessibility roadmap. Every issue that we find is a WCAG violation, but within that, we do prioritize those issues. So we really help our customers understand what are the most critical issues. What is actually blocking someone with a disability or leveraging screen reader technology from accessing the site? And so you can fix those first. We really do break those WCAG guidelines down and really mark them out in the sense of what is the criticality and how can you prioritize reading those issues. Within that, we do also have a very detailed knowledge base that goes into providing very specific code snippets. So whether you're doing internal remediation or working with any external, either CMS platform or digital agency, they're going to have the keys to the city to how to understand why is this an issue? Because for every issue that we present to our customers, we provide a custom recommended fix, allowing them to understand how to remediate that issue. But beyond that, giving them access to very detailed articles on what does accessible code look like? What does it look like when it's done incorrectly? How can you build even the simplest things, right? Like heading levels. A lot of content managers can build heading levels in alt text, but it's not always that simple to build that out. So we have very robust articles on content management, building accessible content, all the way down to the most complex things as it relates to accessibility, like building accessible forms, building accessible image carousels. And we wrote very detailed snippets of designing those things accessibly, and then obviously providing those very detailed code snippets of how to do that. Furthermore, we also do provide access to our Chrome extension. So everyone on your team would have access to sort of run those automated tests in real time. And again, ensure that as you're building content on your site, because one of the biggest things I talk about with everybody I talk to about digital accessibility is it doesn't stop with an audit, right? You have an audit today, that's a snapshot in time. You're probably going to add pages, add content to your website tomorrow, next week, next month. This becomes an ongoing process. And what that Chrome extension does is it really helps our clients manage that content on a daily basis. You can run it in real time. You'll have instantaneous results in less than a second, and you can start to drive accessible content in real time as you're building that out. So it is a very robust platform, and that's really where we deliver those results to our clients. Nicole, to answer your question, I'll answer it here because I think it's a great one. We do also have a free procurement service that we launched a handful of months ago, actually called Procure Ensure. And what Procure Ensure does is it really brings accessibility into that procurement process. We actually just did a webinar on this yesterday internally at Allyant that Sharon and Beth could certainly share with anybody who's interested. I can get them the link to that. And what we're doing through that process is really helping organizations procure accessible technology, whether it be providing recommendations based on our experience in the space. Like you're looking for, your question was pretty advanced, right? A ticketing system. That's something really complex, but sometimes it's simpler things like, hey, we want to deploy a chat service on our website. We have worked with various chat services, and I can think of one off the top of my head that is fully accessible and is really committed to accessibility that you can launch today, and that will be fully usable on your website to people that engage with you, that have a disability and want to chat with you on your website. So we have a repository of vendors that we recommend and do work with. But on the flip side of that, if you're going through an RFP or an RFI or through the procurement process to procure technology that would be deployed to your customers or individuals living in your community or internal employees, right? Like when we think about people services platforms or HR platforms, we can in real time provide an accessibility assessment free of charge to you to ensure that you are procuring accessible technology as part of our services as well. So yeah, Nicole, that was a great question, and we absolutely can help with that. It's a little less in the weeds of auditing something, but it's really providing that procurement support in background. And Nicole, you asked about setting up a meeting. We'll cover that on the back half of this, but you can reach out directly to Beth and Sharon, and they can facilitate those introductions. But we'll cover that on the back half of the call. Um, and then I think there was another question. So Allison, you asked a question, so I'll answer this one in real time. What was the second type of most common screen reader used besides JAWS? Great question, Allison. It is called NVDA. And the great thing about NVDA is NVDA is actually a free and open source screen reader. So the fantastic part about NVDA, and we're actually big proponents of NVDA, and we work with their team to provide them support in any way possible, is when you think about lower income areas, either in the US or globally, NVDA is free to use. It has really substantially increased in market share and functionality really in the last 2 years. So NVDA is very highly used in the blind community as well now. So that would be the other one from a web perspective. Now, when we think about mobile, Allison, I know this wasn't part of your question, but I'll answer it anyways. When we think about mobile accessibility and screen reader usage on mobile, if someone is leveraging an iPhone or an iPad, so they're working on an iOS platform, that is actually built into the platform, and it's called VoiceOver. So any of us actually, I'm an iPhone user personally. So if you have an iPhone, you could turn VoiceOver on today, and that would work as a screen reader. As someone who is blind would do using it in an iOS device. On Android, it is called TalkBack. So those are natively built into the OS platforms on mobile devices. So it's really JAWS and NVDA on the website, and then it's VoiceOver and TalkBack on the mobile side. And then Christine said, I'd like a link to the procurement webinar for supply chain peeps. Yeah, so Sharon and Beth, I will get you that link so you guys can share with anyone that you're working with more holistically. It's going through, side tangent, it's going through captioning right now, so I think it's going to be live early next week on our website. But I will provide the link to Sharon and Beth immediately so that they can pass that along to you guys. So with that, it's kind of sort of like digital accessibility and covering that. And Nicole, I wanted to make sure I answered your question, and Allison, I think I answered yours as well. With that, the kind of final thing I'll talk about on digital accessibility specifically is training. So a lot of teams come to us also to obtain training, right? And that can be part of your sort of internal compliance, support and roadmap in complying with HB 21. So we do a multitude of training for our clients. It can be training that is specific to like designer development teams or content teams. So getting in the weeds to specific roles. And then we also do more holistic training, right? Like intro to accessibility. And that's actually the jump point for a lot of teams when they think about digital accessibility and training and really just awareness around accessibility, where in many cases we'll actually bring a blind individual along to do a screen reader demo, right? A lot of people have never actually seen someone who's blind navigate a website or navigate the internet. It becomes very real, and it becomes a really interactive experience for them to hear how someone who's blind goes through a website and listening to JAWS or NVDA as that individual is demoing. And then we do some keyboard demonstrations. So more of an awareness, and I always call it immersion training, to really build the awareness around why is accessibility important and why are we driving this, right? For either our internal employees or for individuals that are looking to engage with our digital content. So we do also do training very holistically and very customized to specific needs that teams might have. So if that's of interest, we can obviously provide that support through SIPA as well. With that, I'll kind of, and like I said, we'll have plenty of time at the end for questions, so keep them flowing in. If you have any additional questions on digital, I won't ignore them. But with that, I'll kind of jump to electronic document accessibility. So this is another division here at Allyant. This division has actually been in the space, leading the space for almost 22 years now. It was formerly called Common Look, and Common Look has rolled up into being our document division here at Allyant. And what we do on this front is we really support all things document accessibility. In various teams or at various jump points when we think about digital documents. And by digital documents, generally speaking, we're talking about PDFs, but obviously you might post Word documents to your website, like meeting minutes from a board meeting or a town meeting. You might post PowerPoint demonstrations or documents. And you might have, as the poll question shows, you might have a lot of people authoring documents, right? And I think that's one of the biggest challenges that teams have with document accessibility. You might have a very wide net of people that are building PDFs. You might be intaking these from vendors or other municipalities, right? Depending on what your role is or what your organization is supporting. So where we provide very robust services from a document accessibility perspective is kind of twofold, or really threefold, I should say. One is building out an assessment on where you stand today. So we have a very powerful tool that is called Common Look Clarity that can really give you a snapshot of what is your sort of standing as it relates to PDFs. We can run a scan on your site with Clarity. It will map out every single document that you have and give you a report on the accessibility of those documents. So, maybe we find 1,000 documents. How many of those documents have at bare minimum accessibility tagging, right? Because if they aren't tagged, we can basically say by default they're not accessible to individuals living with disabilities. So that's sort of test one. Let's find all the documents. Let's give you a report in real time of what ones are tagged or which ones aren't. Then within those tag documents, we actually can run a real-time assessment on how are they complying to either, PDF UA, WCAG 2.1, other applicable standards in real time and say, hey, of the remaining documents, here's how many are currently inaccessible. So that sort of like a lot of times builds that roadmap for organizations in the sense of understanding what is maybe the landscape look like for them on the PDF front. And I see that, a lot of 11%, that's pretty high, have north of 30 individuals on their team building either documents or web pages. That's a lot, right? You're managing a lot of different people. The good news is for the 60% that's less than 5, this generally tends to be a little easier. It's a little more manageable from a training and support perspective. So I appreciate everyone answering the poll question. But as a result then of that Common Look Clarity scan, it really helps us map out a custom roadmap for document accessibility with our customers. And the way that a lot of customers engage from there is engaging our remediation services. So at Allyant on the document front, we actually do best in class and extremely robust remediation of documents. So say you have 100 documents that are living, breathing on your website. They're not accessible today. They're not tagged. We can intake those documents generally in about 5 business days. We can turn them back to you with 100% guarantee that they are fully compliant. So our team intakes them. We have a very robust and large team of remediation specialists that will go through those documents, remediate them for you, turn back to you a fully accessible PDF, Word doc, etc., that you can then replace on the site, and you've solved accessibility for that document. When I say we really help customize and build out a roadmap for our clients, is that Clarity scan a lot of times will result in a very large list of PDFs, right? Because you've had a site for 5, 10, 15, 20 years in some cases. And over time, the document list builds up. In a lot of scenarios, there's not a use case for going back to a document that you built 10 years ago from a board meeting, right? Do you really want to or need to make that accessible? Probably not the best use of resources, right? So what we can help teams do is say, post within your accessibility statement. And if someone needs an accessible document, within 5 business days, we'll provide that to them, from something that's 10 years ago. And then a lot of clients will say, hey, in the last 12 months, we posted this many documents and we have these that are going to be posted soon. Let's remediate those, right? Let's build that sort of, I would say, line in the sand of what is applicable, what is recent, what are teams actually downloading today, or individuals visiting our website, what are they actually downloading today? What do they need access to in real time? And then we can help you remediate those in real time and pass back that fully compliant document. The bridge then from there is providing either continual remediation or training your team how to build accessible documents. And I say the bridge between that gap because it really depends for a lot of our clients on the volume of PDFs, right? If you're creating 100, 1,000, 5,000 PDFs per year, it probably makes sense to train internal employees on how to build accessible documents, right? You might not want to send us 5,000 documents a year. If we can train your team and give your team the tools to do that within Adobe PDF, within a Microsoft Office suite of products. So we have 2 things. One is called Common Look PDF that installs directly into Adobe and gives your team a real-time plugin to understand every accessibility issue that's in that PDF document, and then does a very specific, powerful guided remediation tool. So if you have an inaccessible table, it kind of says, here's how you can map out that table to be accessible. So if you're doing a very high volume of PDFs, we might help with remediation to solve the challenge up until today. And then from there, we have the tools that can integrate into Adobe PDF, and then I can even go to the next screen because it's kind of hand in hand, or into the Office suite of products, so that you can ensure that your team is building PDFs accessibly or documents accessibly ongoing. We do trainings on these services. We do trainings on PDF accessibility and how to get the most out of the tools, etc. And going back to bridging that gap, right? I think the gap bridge for a lot of teams is if you're only doing 5 documents a year, a lot of those organizations just leverage our remediation services, right? There's probably not a big use case for installing a tooling process and training a team to do this. It's very quick, very easy, fairly low cost for us to just remediate those documents. But again, if you're building 1,000, 5,000, 10,000 documents a year, it might make a lot of sense for us to train that. So we can really help consult and build out a custom roadmap as it relates to accessibility on the digital document front in parallel to the work that we provide support of our clients on the digital accessibility or web accessibility front. And that's a very robust service. With that, again, I'll also talk about training, right? So it's doing the consulting, it's building out the roadmap, it's providing the feedback and doing the remediation, but then again, closing that loop, also providing training on our common look suite of products. So we want to ensure that if you're deploying the product, if you're using the tools, your team is fully empowered to ensure they're getting the most of the tools and they really intimately understand how to drive document accessibility and leverage the tools in a very detailed fashion. With that, I will answer some of the questions that came in. So Christine asked a great question that I'll answer in real time. So are you agnostic regarding content management systems and what are clients using? It's a great question. And you use one of my favorite words. So you stole my thunder. I say every single day on demos, we are platform agnostic. So if you have a website that we can reach via a browser, or a post authentication platform, etc., no, Christine, great word. I love that. I don't ever hear other people use it. I feel like it was my word. So I love that someone else used the word. We are platform agnostic. So whether you're built on WordPress, Drupal, Civic Plus, and there's a million others, right? Like that are out there. We can provide audits for that because we are doing live user testing and we're giving you code level changes and content level changes that drive accessibility. So we can audit any platform that your site or application is built on. Etc. So yeah, so it's a great question. And there was another question. We've seen moderate differences between different screeners, JAWS versus NVDA versus VoiceOver. Do you have a reasoning on to why? We've previously only tested with NVDA, but have had to move to testing more platforms since JAWS specifically will ignore or read things when others do not. Yeah, it's a great, I should answer that live. Yeah, that's a great question and a great comment. You know, as far as the reasoning and the moderate differences, it really, this is a very different answer 3 years ago, right? 3 years ago, NVDA was fairly light from a functionality perspective. NVDA has gained a lot of traction in the space because it is a much more powerful tool today. I would say, and I as you can imagine, I am not blind and I like to keep those questions to a lot of our blind staff who use both NVDA and JAWS every single day. And so I can certainly, if you shoot Sharon about the question, I can tag one of those team members in and they can probably give even a more robust and detailed answer. But as far as why we see differences in that and why we test with both is there are little nuances, right? There are JAWS does things a little bit differently than NVDA. JAWS will skip over some content. Or NVDA doesn't. It might present the issues a little bit differently to different users. So that's why we test with both. Now, when we think about VoiceOver, generally speaking, and I never like to talk in absolutes, but generally speaking, we do VoiceOver testing from a mobile device because that's where a lot of the blind community engages with VoiceOver. If you have a Mac computer, obviously VoiceOver is built in and you can do testing with VoiceOver on that. I would say a lot of the blind community does not use VoiceOver because they're using PCs, and that's because PCs have an insert key and the Mac keyboard does not, and that insert key is actually very heavily used by screen readers. So WebAIM actually does a survey every single year of screen reader usage. We watch that very closely. All of our blind auditors respond to that survey of what they're doing in their personal life, and they actually just released the survey yesterday. I saw, so I reshared it on my LinkedIn page. And so that's sort of what we track in the sense of understanding, do we need to move how we're auditing or leverage additional native screen readers? But we do JAWS and NVDA because of the little nuances that come with them on the website, and then obviously VoiceOver and Android as our defaults on the mobile side. So that's a great question. And like I said, shoot Sharon about the note. We'd be happy to answer that further from one of our senior blind auditors if they have any additional insight into that question. So another question, what does Common Look Office offer beyond what's offered by the MS Accessibility Checker? I found the MS checkers to be pretty good for creating accessible documents. That's a great question. And I believe we have a demo that we can provide on sort of, what it finds versus what it doesn't. My understanding, and I'm not a document expert, so bear with me, and Jared and Beth can certainly get you in touch with Dave, who is a document expert on our side and works on that front with all of our SIPA clients. So I believe we check for a lot more things than the Microsoft Office checker, and provide the feedback in a way that's a little more user friendly, right? So it's more guided in the sense of understanding how to remediate. So a lot of times the challenge with either using Adobe's checker or the Microsoft suite checker is that even if it finds the issues, a lot of content managers or document creators don't really understand how to build accessibility into that. What our tools really help you do is understand in a very guided format of how to make the documents accessible. But that's a great question, and I will make a note of passing along any details we have of our Office product versus the Microsoft checker, because I think we have some documentation on that. So I will provide that to Beth and Sharon, and you can certainly reach out to them for further support on that. So great question. And then another one, I'm going to make that question. Okay. What would you recommend? Oh, I gotta hit the answer live button. What would you recommend for more complex documents such as budget requests with various tables of contents, graphics? Do you recommend more complex documents be sent for remediation, or is this something our team could handle with the Common Look training? That's a fantastic question, and I have actually seen this demo and I've used the tool. So I'm not a document expert, right? I don't have a background in building accessible documents, and I actually, as part of my training through Common Look, I was sent a few documents that I had built and used the Adobe tool to build accessible tables. And I would say, for me, not being an expert, either a content expert or an accessibility PDF expert, it is extremely easy to do. So they have table tools, they have graphic tools, and it's very guided in that sense. And so I kind of answered in the last answer as well. It's one of the most powerful parts of the tools. It really does help teams understand not just that you have accessibility issues in those tables, but it almost has a guided output of here's how we recommend building the table, and you can almost like click it in there, and then it builds that accessible table for you. So it's extremely guided. With that said, that's a really fantastic question in the sense that it really is client dependent. So in I don't like to pigeonhole answers in the sense that some organizations say, look, like these complex documents, we are going to send those on to Common Look or Allyant to remediate because it's just that much simpler, right? We can turn those in 3 to 5 business days, and there's 100% guarantee on them. Others, over time, as they build out their competency on building complex documents, they do learn how to leverage the tools through the trainings, etc. So it's kind of client dependent, but yes, I would say that the Common Look tools make that extremely simple, and that's really where it shines, is in the sense of giving you the guided output. I think at last test, and we have some documentation on this that I can provide to Beth and Sharon as well, it's like 10 plus times faster than using obviously the Adobe tools, or just understanding how to build things like complex tables, etc. So that's a great question, and hopefully I answered that properly. Great question. Will Common Look provide guided output for maps? So maps are maps are a big challenge, right? Because a map is really a very complex image that needs alt text. So that's another horizon that is a big challenge for a lot of teams, including our team, in the sense that a lot of times what we do from a map or image perspective is we actually train our clients on building accessible alt text. And the reason for that is you could send me a map and I could have my external idea of what that map means. I happen to be in my free time a very big fisherman. I might say, look at this sweet lake. It looks like it have a lot of fish in it. You might be trying to portray something like, here's the road usage, right? Or here's where we're looking to put a stoplight. We generally don't have that context, right? So maps and images, it's generally, from our perspective, training on how to build strong alt text that allows someone that is obviously accessing with screen reader technology or otherwise to understand the context of that map. So that's a phenomenal question, and that's generally how we support from a map or image perspective on that front. So I love that question. That's a great one. And hopefully that helped answer that. So with that, oh great. Do you have a solution for making process maps accessible? That, Barb, that's a great question. I I don't know. And I'm assuming, Barb, maybe you can put a follow-up so I can make note of this. Are you asking within a document, I'm assuming, or within like web content or through a third party? Uh, Maybe you can drop another one and I'll make note of that and then document. Okay, that's what I assumed, but I never like to assume because we know what happens when I do that. Um, I don't know. So let me ask the team on that, and that's a great follow-up for Sharon and Beth to provide details on. I'm actually gonna write that down, Barb, because that's a great question. Process map. So draw yellow. Okay, perfect. Don't know on that one. So that's a stumper, and I don't want to give you a wrong answer and just say yes, because I don't really know. But I'm sure we've solved that for many clients in the past. So the team will have good insight. With that, and like I said, keep the questions flowing in. I'll kind of now cover on printed document accessibility as sort of the last sort of spoke in the wheel that we offer, customer communication support on here at Allyant. It really, this one's fairly straightforward, right? It's as in some cases as simple as it sounds. So what we do on the printed document accessibility front is, say you have either something that you're sending out printed or something that you have a digital document of that you want to send to customers in a printed information. My example of this might not be applicable to a lot of the audience on the call, but I always think it makes it very easy to explain, is monthly mortgage statements, right? We either all get them in either digital format, or we get them in the mail in a printed format. So when you have a customer, if you're sending out statements or that monthly mortgage statement, we have a customer that is low vision or blind. What our team does on this front to really simplify this process and explaining it is we intake that document and we actually create a number of accessible variations of that. So obviously we're going to create an accessible PDF of that. And we are also going to create through one file an accessible large flow reprint. So large flow reprint, what that is you might have a customer who is low vision but not blind. We're actually seeing a lot of customers engage this way through the elderly population, right? They don't want something in 12-point font. They want it in 100-point font. It's not as simple as just taking that entire document and selecting all and saying like, make this 12-point, 100-point font, right? That would, in theory, work, but it would make a very messy document. So what we do on that front is we actually reflow that. So that 1 or 2 page document might turn into 12 or 14 pages, but we reflow that in a way that is still clean, still gives them all the information, but it's in a version that they can see in a much larger font. We can then print that and distribute that to the customer. On the flip side of that, we actually can obviously turn that same document into printed braille. So we have 2 very large braille printing facilities, one in the US, one in Canada, where if we get a document and you have a customer who needs something printed in braille, we can actually print that through those facilities and then either distribute that back to you or distribute that directly to the customer. So that's sort of the last spoke in the wheel. Where this comes into play for a lot of public entities is through things like textbooks, right? If you're in higher education and you have a student who is low vision or blind, we can intake those textbooks and print them in an accessible format to them and then distribute them, including things, very complex things like geography books, accessible math. We do some really cool things on that front. So we can really take any document, printed or digital, and turn that into an accessible format that is printed through our team, and distribute that to the customer on their behalf. With that said, I see there's a bunch of questions flowing in. So that kind of covers my sort of presentation on sort of what we do here at Alliance. I'll answer a couple of these questions and then I'll kind of go to sort of next steps with Sharon and Beth. So let's see, process maps, typically PDFs can be made accessible on Acrobat Pro or Common Look PDF by using tagging. Yeah, certainly that's good insight, Brian. I don't have a lot of background on that. Maybe you've used Common Look PDF or Acrobat Pro and you do that, so you answered it for me. So I certainly appreciate that. And we can send more details around on that front. Kathleen has a great question, and Sharon, Beth, I haven't had a lot of these questions. I believe the answer is yes, but I don't want to assume. So Kathleen asks, is printed document accessibility part of HB 21? And Sharon, I see you nodding your head, but I'll let you
Yes,
take that one.
it is.
Perfect. Great. David asked a question. It appears there are many participants. Oh, I'll answer live. that would benefit from connecting with the rulemaking process that is currently underway under the state OIT. The proposed rules provide some comfort on compliance complexities, such as archived documents that are quite difficult to remediate, which I would totally agree with. Here's a link to that information. So, David, I appreciate you sharing that information. Sharon, Beth, I don't know if you guys have anything to
Yes, that's
add to
great.
that.
Thank you for putting that up. I believe the comment period is ended and they're working on getting all of those submissions gathered and reworked and put into that rule revision for HB 21-1110 now.
Perfect.
That'd be a great question for the Office of Information Technology TAP team.
There you go. I appreciate that, David, as well, posting that in there. And so then I'm looking at the poll question 3, which is this is super helpful. So biggest challenge, kind of across the board, right? And that's to be expected. I would say website document accessibility is sort of the leader, which is natural, right? A lot of teams aren't highly trained in website or document accessibility, and what that means. Cost budget. That's a not just an HB 21 challenge. That's a challenge for all of the customers that we work with, right? And so we do really take pride in building out a custom proposal processes, as Sharon and Beth have seen, based on your size, based on what your organizational goals are, and really understanding those goals and building something that's custom to you. And with that, I'll sort of go to the next slide where Sharon, you and Beth can take the lead on this. But if you are interested in any of our Alliant services, Sharon, do you want to take this one, or do you want me to talk through it? I'll kind of leave this one to you guys.
You are welcome to talk through it. Essentially, it's, if anyone is interested, this is kind of what we need to get started. And, Ryan, if you want to share, there's any other information they could provide, that'd be very helpful. That way we can expedite. If you want to, say, schedule a call with us and Ryan, we're happy to do that too. But, we are kind of thinking if we could just get you some more information quickly, this is sort of what we need.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Sharon, and I would echo that thought. I think, you can reach out to Sharon and Beth, and I'll jump to the next slide because we have obviously everyone's contact information, and then I'll kind of pause here for questions that are flowing in additional Q&A, so you can see Beth and Sharon's emails. Yeah, I think if you can provide Beth and Sharon with sort of if you want a website quote, obviously the website or websites that might be in scope to get things started, and then we can have a further conversation from there. If you're interested in document accessibility, kind of the same thing would apply, right? You might have a specific set of documents that you want us to look at or potentially remediate. Obviously, send those along, or you might just have a website that you say, "Hey, run a clarity report on and give us the health assessment," and we can certainly do that as well. So, yeah, flow all of that through Beth and Sharon, and Dave and I will jump in as quickly as possible to provide support on that front, and then we can have deeper dives on calls from there as needed. With that, I'll sort of jump to additional Q&A. So Ron asked a great question. Can SIPA and or Alliant help with defining the scope of applications, websites, document that HB 21 will apply to for our agency? The short answer to that is unequivocally yes. That's a lot of the work that I do on the front end, a lot of the work that Dave, my counterpart on the document side, does on the front end. In the sense of really helping you understand, Ron, what we would recommend having in scope too, right? In a lot of times there's a delineation between what you own in third parties, right? So thinking about that procure insure and in procuring accessible technology. And there's a lot of intricacies in that, especially for, state government and municipalities, of sort of how you're leveraging various third party tools, how customers or individuals are engaging with your brand, how internal employees are engaging with you. So the short answer to that, Ron, is yes. We can certainly map out a recommended approach for document accessibility. We can build out a recommended scope for what we would recommend you have in scope as far as key user flows, key functionality on the website. And that's a big part of our services on the front end, really helping you drive that roadmap. And from there, collaborating with you on that roadmap, right? There might be various priorities that you have from there, but yeah, absolutely, we can certainly help you with that. And it's a good segue into reaching out to Beth and Sharon to have us provide that support. And then Joshua asked the question, with printed document accessibility, I had to take a call real quick, so I might have missed this, but are there reliable ways to automate those systems? That's a fantastic question. And that would be something that would drive a demo. But yes, Joshua, and I don't know the context of sort of what you're asking for, but for a lot of our clients, we have very much automated that process, in the sense of using on that front, we do use very advanced but AI in the sense of creating accessible documents and then allowing us to print them. So, again, I'll go back to the easy explanation for me always is mortgage statements, right? A bank, and we work with 8 of the 10 largest banks in the US on this front. They might have 100,000 customers that need accessible format of that mortgage statement. Those mortgage statements are fairly static, right? You have different customer numbers, you have different, obviously, billing details and maybe account statement information. So we can certainly automate at scale in the sense of you have a specific template that goes out to customers, and then sort of populating in background through all required certifications like HIPAA, SOC, et cetera, of ensuring that we've sort of automated that process and can almost print that in real time specific to each individual customer. And we're also doing a lot of that in the healthcare space as well, right? So healthcare, insurance, financial institutions, et cetera. So Joshua, hopefully that answered your question. I think I understood it, but if I didn't, keep me honest and post another question. I see the thumbs up, so I like it. I think I did. But yes, we can definitely automate that, and that's obviously, as you can imagine, it's a little more complex process, and we can run you through that on a demo at any time. You can reach out to Beth and Sharon on that front as well. Awesome. Well, I'll kind of pause there. Sharon, Beth, anything I missed? Otherwise, I'll kind of watch if any other questions populate in.
No, this was fantastic, and I've unmuted everyone. So if you have something you want to ask out loud, please just go ahead and feel free, or keep throwing it in the chat or Q&A. We've got a couple more minutes left, so take advantage of Ryan while you got him. Ryan, what's the biggest hurdle that you usually see people have? Like, is it trying to learn how to do the documents themselves, for example?
Yeah, great question, Sharon. I would say the biggest hurdle that we see or that I see on the web front is, geez, that's a great question. I would say on the web front, it's really understanding how to map out an accessibility audit, right? Because there's a lot of organizations that give really great audits. I think what we pride ourselves on is giving an audit back that is tangible, right? And it's very prescriptive. It says here, like not all, from our perspective and from the disabled community's perspective, including many of our internal auditors that live with disabilities, not all accessibility issues are created equally, right? Some are, a blind auditor will tell you that's a nuisance. I can work around that. Others are, I can't do anything on this site because the hover navigation is inaccessible, right? And I think a lot of times when teams either get scanning reports only or they get audits, it's kind of like what it's in a spreadsheet and it's like got 1,000 rows and it's like, what am I supposed to do with this, right? And it is a big challenge in the sense of understanding how to make it tangible and not giving so much information that no one ever does anything on accessibility. So that's one thing we really pride ourselves on. It's a huge challenge for teams internally that we work with. And that's where Hub and our process really comes into play of prioritizing those issues, mapping out those custom recommended fixes, and then training teams how to build accessible content downstream, right? A lot of content managers are building things like blog pages or posting a new event page. Well, they're pulling eventually from an accessible template. And then it's really just managing, heading levels and alt text, right? That's the bulk of what a lot of individuals and understanding how to mark up links. That's what a lot of individuals content wise are doing. And so I think really from our perspective, a big challenge is accessibility looks so daunting on the front end on the website because it's just confusing and it's almost like too much. On the document side, I would say building complex functionalities, right? So we had some questions on, maybe maps, but more so tables. I think tables are very challenging for a lot of organizations, and that's where, again, I can speak to this personally because I do run a lot of the documents I create for internal teams because I do work with blind individuals every single day, and I send them stuff in documents that have tables and in mapping out with our common look tools how to do a table, and I'm not remotely a PDF accessibility expert, and it gives me that guided tour. It makes it extremely simple. I can generally do that in just a couple minutes, where if I didn't have that tool, I would be quite literally guessing in full transparency. So I do think complex functionality, right? Be it tables, be it graphs, just understanding how to build those things accessibly. But I would also say, Sharon, and I should have almost gone earlier in the timeline, right? Like understanding how to map this out from a document perspective, because I think a lot of teams even look at like HB 21 And it's like, well, we have 5,000 documents and we got to remediate all of them. And I would say not necessarily, right? Like as we talked about, let's figure out that line in the sand and let's figure out a process that says within our accessibility statement, if you need a document from 12 years ago, we'll within 5 business days, we'll provide that to you. Here's someone you can reach out to, right? Really helping make this a little more simplified than thinking it's an all-in process, which many times it's not. So yeah, great question, Sharon. Did that answer it?
It did. And actually, you brought up another one. I was wondering when you said hover. So if someone has a menu and they've got like
Yeah.
levels of their menu, is that a really bad thing?
Great. It's not, no, well, good question. It's not a bad thing, but it's the number one thing that I hear from our screen reader auditors every day in the sense of the most accessible thing they run into, right? Everybody's gone to hover menus or mega menus, depending on who you talk to, whereas we've all seen them, right? You have to scroll your mouse up and you hover, and when you hover, it drops it down, and then you can click on the sub menu. A lot of hover menus by default actually put a screen reader into what is called forms mode. So it thinks it's in a form and it thinks it wants what the screen reader is doing is it thinks the site wants you to fill out information where you're actually in a menu. So menus by nature are very inaccessible. And so, yeah, it's not necessarily hard to remediate once teams understand how to, and we kind of map that out for them. The great thing about something like a hover menu is once you make it accessible, until you migrate, rebuild, redesign it, it kind of lives on, right? You can add categories, you sort of are building a component accessibly, but yeah, that's one of the biggest challenges that our auditors tell me about all the time. And it's one of the most common issues that we find on websites is everybody's gone to hover menus because we all like to have a clean menu, right? We don't want to list 30 options on the top. So you hover over services and then it has, here's our 10 services. So it's very clean from a UI UX perspective, design perspective, but obviously it can be a challenge for accessibility. Yeah, great question. And you nailed it. That's exactly what I was talking about. Don't see any other questions flowing in. So I would just say from the Allyant side, certainly appreciate your time. I hope everyone has an amazing and happy holidays. Again, not lost on me that it's the busy time of year, and you carved out some time to listen and hear about our services on accessibility. And obviously, I look forward to working with many of you through Beth and Sharon.
Awesome. And thank you for your time, Ryan. We appreciate it. So to all of you, please do not hesitate to contact any of us with any follow-up questions or requests to learn more, demo of like their hub that they have that they mentioned. Go to sipa.colorado.gov to register for future webinars. We've got 3 scheduled: January 17th, Propeller, January 24th, NTT Data, and February 28th with Tyler, Colorado. We'll find other services that we can help you procure, valuable cybersecurity and other accessibility resources for your organization. Our monthly newsletter, which is chock full of great info, and you can subscribe for that. It's just once a month, and lots more. If you want to return to this webinar, we will be getting this uploaded to our YouTube channel, so you'll be able to find it there. It should be also in an email that will come to you tomorrow, post follow-up. And we really want to make these webinars as relevant and informational as possible. So we would really appreciate if you take a minute to fill out the brief 3-question survey following this. And we again would like to thank you all for your time and wish you all a fantastic day.